50 tons of emission. So the 50 tons of emission which you really cannot avoid or reduce, you have to offset them by doing some activity like tree planting, buying some carbon credits, involving in different activities where you think you can cut down your GHG emission. Then only you can become just a carbon neutral organization. Because there can't be any organization which is termed as zero carbon. Just to go over to some of the simple initiatives going around in different organizations, be it a SME or a large organization. First one, cutting down the paper. Most of the companies, if you see, they are going paperless. They don't want to use any more paper. Because paper has a significant impact on the GHG emission. So these are some of the areas which you can implement in your organization. Very small initiatives, doesn't need any investment. Just simple initiatives wherever you can cut down the paper consumption, cut it down. The next one is for the electricity power management. Most of the offices usually there are some vampires in the night, the red lights of the CPU just turn on when you go back from your office. It actually consumes some electricity. Consumption of electricity, which is nothing but the GHG emission. So what then it is, you turn off your computers when you are not working, which in turn saves your electricity, which in turn give you a saving already. So these are really some very small initiatives which needs no investment, but some small steps which you have to take care of your organization. Another one, power consumption. If you don't need power, turn it off in that particular area. Set up your air cooling system at particular temperature. Create an awareness among your employees. Okay, when you're the last one to leave the office, should turn off the light. The lights in the toilet should be turned off. Only somebody going, turn it on. So those are very small initiatives which can be implemented and which in turn reduces your carbon footprint as well as gives you some cost-effective benefits as well. Reduction in your electricity bills. This is a sample of a representation of CO2 report. This is for the New Zealand. Different gases, how much are the emissions from different gases? 48% of the emissions are through carbon dioxide, 16% through N2O, 35% through methane. And these are some of the activities which in total compromise to the 100% GHG emission of that particular country. From agricultural waste, energy consumption, industry, transportation. So this is how you can represent your CO2 emission as well. It depends how interesting you want to make it, how boring you want it to be. Now in this image, this is the global carbon footprint of different countries. The maximum one being China and the US. They have very significant GHG emission. Philippines, if you see the small one, the white circle over there, that's Philippines. Not really so huge, but still we have some emissions already. So this is a global map of the carbon footprints around the world from different countries. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you will be able to calculate your carbon footprint going back now. So thank you very much for listening to me and hope to see you someday. Thank you.
May we please call Sir Jonah and Sir Arvin on stage for the open forum. There's an open mic here. Or if you're too shy to ask, there is, I think that you are given sheets or questionnaires that you can write, and we'll have someone collect them for you. Right off the bat, I'll ask Sir Arvin and Sir Bonner. Sir, do you have the latest trending for the Philippines? As in, how is our carbon footprint? Is it getting high, lower? What are the things that we're doing effectively or efficiently that is lowering our carbon footprint? Or is it because people are more aware now that we're taking these general steps?
There is, carbon footprint, geographic area carbon footprint is done by Climate Change Commission. Okay? And this is reported as an official communication to the UNFCCC. This is a geographic carbon footprint. No? It's not a corporate carbon footprint. Now, in 1996, they published a report on the total carbon footprint. So far, they haven't published it yet. There's supposed to be a second publication. Someone did the second publication. I've been asking for a copy. It has not been made at all because there were issues with the publication and so on and so forth. But most certainly, given the consumption of fuel, the increase in the consumption of fuel, the increase in businesses, increase in population, increase in traveling, increase in essentially all kinds of business parameters, infrastructure, and so on and so forth, there should be a steep increase in carbon.
Sir Arvin, sir, would you share?
Yeah, what I've been seeing since long time is they have a global report where they count all the GHG emission from different countries. But I would say that's more on the private pocket sector, how much are they involved in these particular activities. But corporates, because it's really not really mandatory for the corporates in the Philippines to produce a carbon footprint report, the consistency of the reliability or the accuracy of the data which is there, it's not really so high. Whereas if you see most of the European countries, it becomes mandatory for them to report their carbon footprint. They have to have a sustainability report, they have to have a carbon footprint assessment report. The accuracy of data becomes really viable in those particular areas. Southeast Asia, not particularly Philippines, but Southeast Asia also, still a developing country, still going to take time to understand these issues and make it mandatory for all the organization as well to report on. So still going to take some time. The data which shall be referred is generally by the DOE or the Climate Change Commission in terms of how much is your carbon emission in terms of the public sector, most probably.
Thank you for sharing. That's very insightful. Do we have questions? Yes, does anyone have a question? Yes, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Ian Pantoy from JG Summit Philippines Shared Services Group. With respect to greening the supply chain, we're good speakers here. May we hear your comments about the recent ordinances of most Philippine cities banning plastic bags in favor of paper bags?
Yeah, that's one of the things which I've been also looking after, because most of the supermarkets, wherever you go, they force you to use paper bags. They have eco bag also, which you have to buy to use it. But paper bags are the most commonly ones used. It has a big impact on global warming as well as carbon footprint as well. But still, I mean, they are trying to cut on the poly bag because it has a significant impact as compared to the CO2. Because you use styrofoam or the SF6 in terms of reducing your plastics, it has a significant impact. So the thing is, because of the maturity in terms of the people, awareness in the people, you have to cut down the ones which are more significant, then you have to slowly reduce, make them use eco bag more and more. So paper bags are not really so crucial, it's not really a good practice to use paper bags, but still, at least you are cutting down the plastic bags as compared to the paper bags.
The Department of Science and Technology, headed by the team of Reyes Guerra, has been engaged by the National Solid Waste Management Commission to conduct a life cycle assessment to compare the plastic bags and paper in terms of different parameters, relevant parameters, carbon footprint, content, water, and so on. The study has not been published, has not been carried out yet because of different issues also in the procurement. But I'd like to give you a scenario how, so therefore I could not give you the data, the accurate data in terms of the Philippine plastic bags, the plastic bags available in the Philippines versus the paper available in the Philippines. But based on discussions with the plastic industry, the supply of paper is in the Philippines is really sourced from different countries in the region. And if you look at the transportation of this paper into the country, look at costs, environmental costs in terms of water and so on. It could also be high in terms of impact. While we're waiting for the results of the LCA, I can only estimate that replacing plastic bag and paper may not necessarily lead to positive benefits in terms of impact. The problem of waste of plastic is altogether different. We say plastics has been blamed for being the cause of flooding and so on and so forth, but really flooding is a result of increased rainfall and the plugging of the Restero. The solution is not banning farming. I'm not speaking this from my organization, but it's really the right way of managing our resources. Looking at also from the life cycle perspective, plastics can actually be recycled, reprocessed, and fed back on and on and on into the supply chain, into the business cycle. Paper, on the other hand, is a one-way street. But you have your paper bags. Nobody really collects the paper bags anymore. It gets thrown, gets wet, and it's impossible to recycle that kind of paper anymore. So one has to look into these kinds of parameters before one would decide sana to do certain actions, whether to use plastic or paper. But we all are anticipating the results of the LCA, and hopefully this will give us more empirical data as basis for decision making.
Has the Philippine government offered or given incentives to companies who are able to significantly reduce their carbon footprint or had initiatives to reduce the carbon footprint? Have there been any incentives or just to hype up the issue?
Well, nothing that I know. I might not be aware, but there's really nothing that I see. We've tried to. This is also one of the advocacies that we have for PPE, provide incentives for the private sector of carbon reduction. Try to officially communicate to the Climate Change Commission. We've set a meeting with the Executive Director and Commissioner. When we were discouraged to pursue the advocacy because they said DOF will not, most certainly not to take such in terms of financial incentives. So what we're working now is a new business, is a policy, enabling policy that will enable private sector to invest on carbon reduction. This is with the forestry industry, and we're working with the Forestry Management Bureau of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, such that there can be a PPP, which will be government and private sector, of course, where this PPP will run a reforestation program for industrial purposes, meaning for timber cutting to revive our forestry industry. The private sector can invest in that PPP, and for that investment, for that quantity of investment, they can be given, there could be certain X number of trees that can be planted, which will sequester or take in certain X quantity of CO2, and this quantity of CO2 can be calculated, validated, and can actually be given as a carbon credit to the investing company. Therefore, your carbon reduction cost, instead of it being a cost of money down the drain for tree planting initiatives, it can actually be an investment to a forestry business. Therefore, it's not money laundering. When the forestry industry harvests tip for timber, of course you get your dividends from the shares that you buy in terms of investment. So we're trying to develop certain mechanisms by which it will be possible financially for private sector to go for carbon reduction rather than going for incentives. We will try to create enabling environment like a policy and a business model for so that the private sector will have an option that they could not say no to. In other words, the investment that they, instead of spending for tree planting, they just invest their money. It's not lost, it's an investment, and it's going to give them returns in terms of the income of the industrial forestry as well as the carbon credit that they ought to buy if, whenever they need carbon credits. So this is a work in progress we have now with FMB, with NEDA, National Economic Development Authority, PPP Center, and hopefully it's gonna mature and policy will be signed next year. So that is something we might be able to look forward to, make carbon reduction instead of a cost an investment.
The floor is still open for one or two more questions. Sir, then, sir, then one more question.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Alan Cristobal from ALC Holdings. My question is to Mr. RP. Well, my ALC Foundation is our CSR arm, which is advocating bamboo planting along the riverbanks and the mountainside all over the Philippines. We started this September 15 in Montalban, Rizal. So you mentioned that in order to neutralize the carbon footprint is by planting activity. Now my question, do you consider as bamboo as a possible solution to mitigate climate change and that can really reduce carbon footprints? And second, if you think that bamboo is a possible solution, how can we partner with PBE and other possible company partners of yours in order for us to promote bamboo planting and to integrate this into your CSR activity? Thank you.
Thank you. Every tree which you plant, it has a particular sequestration rate. For example, banana, it has almost a sequestration rate of 1.5 or 1.2 tons of CO2 per hectare. Similarly for coconut, somewhere around 5 to 6 tons of CO2 per hectare. So for bamboo, I'm not really sure what's the sequestration rate, but there should be a sequestration rate and how much carbon it can offset for a particular hectare of land which you're providing for the planting activity. So the amount of area which you have covered, the tree plantation activity of this particular plant bamboo, you have to calculate it, how much is the emission you are offsetting from that particular land. The maturity level also is different for different kind of tree you are planting. For coconut, it's almost 2 to 3 years. Banana, it's just 1 to 2 years, but it has a very low sequestration rate. So the offsetting will only be done once your tree has matured. Once it's able to offset your carbon emission. Because it does not happen when you plant your tree today, and tomorrow onwards you can start counting it as your carbon offset. It has to be reaches maturity level age, which is different for different trees, and then only you can try to identify how much have you offset. So that's one of the things which we have to find out how much is the sequestration rate for the bamboo tree. I'm not really sure about the value for that, but there are different value for based on the area where you are planting, how much is the fertility of the soil, how much is the CO2 in that particular area. So those are the factors which consider the sequestration rate of a particular tree which you are planting.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me just add, well, why we choose bamboo? First, according to the data also from the internet, it sequestered about 70% higher than any other trees or plants. And why bamboo? It's primarily because it multiplies. You plant one, 2 years, 3 years down the road, probably it reaches hundreds or even thousands. So that's basically our concept, why we advocate bamboo as compared to other trees. And as you know, bamboo is the fastest growing plants on Earth. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
The agro-industrial business. I would like to ask Mr. Arpit, I saw one of your presentations there that 43% of GHG come from agriculture, probably from the animal manure. What's the potential here in the country, in the Philippines? I understand only a handful are collecting biogas. So, do you think that can be pushed further as far as bringing the supply chain is concerned? And any suggestions on making the most out of the manure?
Just to clear one thing, I made yours for New Zealand actually, not for Philippines. So that's the area, how much is the emission being done in that particular country. For Philippines, yes, actually I've come across few of the companies who own biomass plant to produce their own power. So they own I would say FMCG, they are in the business of FMCG, and the waste which they get from the production, they use that as a biomass plant for their own power generation. So in Philippines, I think agriculture is really high. I'm not really sure right now, but as compared to India, India is really far ahead in agriculture practices. Farming land is really high. So what we do is, in India, back in India, most of the farmers for the areas, they are given some biogas plant to generate their own electricity. Because still in India, there are certain areas where electricity is not yet there. So the government has said they have given the biogas plant to generate their own electricity. Philippines still has a high potential of agriculture. Biomass is the best thing which we can use to generate our own electricity. Because even the electricity rate is really high in the Philippines as compared to other countries in Southeast Asia or even in the world. So we need to look for ways where we can generate our own electricity. When you talk about the renewable source, it becomes a bit expensive as compared to the biogas plant. Biogas is readily available. It's also a practice of managing your waste. How can you manage your waste? So you can have 2 areas covered through one particular plant. So it's a good potential for this particular country, but still it's not really so much use in this particular area. So we have to look for ways. How can we implement more and more biogas plant to generate our own electricity?
Thank you. I know this is a very interesting topic, and I know a lot of you have a lot of questions to address to our speakers, but if you want, you could please, we can actually collect them and just email our speakers, or we're out of time already, and we will address them by email. I'd like to take this opportunity to actually give our token of appreciation to our speakers, Sir Arpit, Sir Bonar. Maybe call on the Anap and for our token of appreciation to Sir Arpit and Sir Bonar.